Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Hopefully everyone is able to get a good trading day in, get some good trades under your belts, and, well, maybe stay awake. Today was a little bit slow. But as always, before we jump on in, make sure to swing it over to slingshotfutures.com. Click on the newsletter registration. From here, you're going to be able to register for our free newsletter. In that newsletter, that's where we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff that we just don't have time to talk about in this live stream. And that's going to be everything from stocks, crypto options, futures, whatever's moving that will show up in that newsletter. So make sure to sign up for that so you don't miss anything important. Along with that, over here on the 3-day trial, from there you can sign up for a free 3-day trial in the room. You can hang out with us for a couple days, see what we're all about, see how we approach the markets, see how we trade the markets, analyze the markets, can ask some questions, have some fun with us, and just a good way to get your feet a little bit wet and see what we're all about. So make sure to sign up for that if you haven't done so already. Now, taking a look at the news for tomorrow. Now, the news for tomorrow is relatively sparse. You know, today we had a decent amount of news today, but tomorrow not so much. We're dealing with one of those low news kind of days. We do have some UK news early at 4:30 out of the retail sales for June, forecasted at 0.1%, and then we have the Philly Fed Manufacturing Index for July, forecasted at 21.6. That's about it. So no news really going on for tomorrow, and after, after 8:30, there's not really much going on. So there's not a whole lot that we're going to have to worry about for tomorrow in terms of that side of the calendar. Now, if we look at the earnings, as you can tell, the earnings calendar is relatively full. This is the earnings for today after the market close. We have some big names coming out after the market close, with IBM coming out at 4.10. They're estimating at $3.03. We also have American Express coming out at 4.05. They're forecasting $1.83. Alcoa forecasted at $1.33 at 4.10. And just a boatload of names in here. You've got eBay and just... Today is going to be a little bit of an interesting one. Now, earlier this morning before the market opened, we had a lot of big earnings news, and now this time around we also have a lot of earnings coming out too. So, I mean, for the most part, earnings are definitely on the table. Now, this is just today after the market closes, and there's quite a few. Now, if we look at tomorrow morning before the market opens, we have even more. There's even more on the list for tomorrow morning, starting as early as 5:45 in the morning. We have BBT, you've got Keycore, Philip Morris International, Domino's Pizza. I've got a lot of different names coming out with earnings tomorrow morning, and definitely something that we're going to want to keep an eye on there as well. Looking at the IPOs for tomorrow. Today's IPO, we had 3 of them come out today. I was looking at Ruby being the big play, but that ended up not being the case. Ruby was kind of lackluster. It opened up. It had all of the check marks. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about on how to trade IPOs, make sure to check the tutorial video that I did for the YouTube page on trading IPOs. But it had all the boxes checked. It looked absolutely perfect for a potential trade on Ruby, and then it just fell apart for the rest of the day. So it was a really crappy situation on Ruby. It just didn't set up. CCB was way too low of volume. Didn't really care about that one. And then CNRX opened up, and I really didn't see it. One of the members pointed out, hey, CNRX is open, and absolutely killed it on CRNX. So the one that I really wasn't anticipating working out that well, I had more focus on Ruby. CRNX worked out beautifully. So picture-perfect trade on CRNX today if you were following those IPOs. Tomorrow, we have some IPOs as well. Quite a few of them, actually. If you'll notice the... Hello? Why won't it let me... There we go. We've got a bunch of names on the IPO list for tomorrow. Tomorrow, starting off, we have ESTA, E-S-T-A. That's a $61 million offering. Tilray, T-L-R-Y, $165 million offering. AFG Holdings, $376 million. MYFW, First Western Financial, Inc., that is a $44 million offering. Constellation Pharmaceuticals, $98 million offering. Alicos Inc., $117 million offering, and DermaDoctor, DDOC, $14 million offering. So there are a ton of IPOs for tomorrow. In this case, we have 7. Today we had 3. Only one of them worked out nicely today. The other ones were kind of crap. Fingers crossed we can get 1 or 2 tomorrow to work out nicely as well. But tomorrow, the IPO calendar is definitely chock full of stuff. Got a boatload of earnings going on and not a whole lot of news. So it could be definitely an interesting one, to say the least. So, starting off on the euro, again, as you can tell, I am on my other charting platform because my other charts are still messed up. So we'll have to kind of deal with that as it goes. But looking at the euro, first up on the 4-hour chart, we have a situation where we are still in a range. The market did end up continuing lower, so the sellers did push the market further down yesterday with continuation, and it did exactly what we wanted to see. It paused, stalled out for a little while, and then continued down. Didn't quite get up to where I wanted it. You know, I generally like to see a good correction inside of the candle to sell into. Didn't really happen this time around, but we are driving down. Now, the big thing that stands out here when it comes to the euro is simply the fact that obviously we are in a major level of support. We still haven't hit that yet, and we're coming close. But we do have some other levels of support to potentially work with, and that's going to be right here. And we're getting stuck on top of these areas right now, and the euro is bouncing back. This is very typical of a range-bound scenario where the market is, you know, it has a bigger objective, which is what we're looking for at the lows there, but it's got a bunch of other ones that it's got to work through first, and it'll hit it, kind of bounce off of it a little bit, go back down, bounce off of it again, and just keep kind of rinsing and repeating until it hits the major objective. And once that major objective is done and tested, that's where the market is going to make a decision. So even though we are seeing a little bit of a bounce back here on the euro off of this kind of double bottom-esque sort of area, we'll just put it as a zone. It was a beautiful bounce. Chances are it's going to bounce, you know, for at least a little while. But the anticipation is that this will roll over and try to push back down again because we have the ultimate objective a little bit further down. So I don't necessarily think the euro is done selling, but we are in a short-term bounce with sellers taking profit off of those highs, and that's likely what we're seeing right now. Still stuck inside the wedge, not really much going on there, and everything else pretty straightforward. So as it stands on the euro, anticipating the market to roll back over and reattempt those lows again to try to drive down to the big area of interest, the one that I actually care about more, at 16,245. So that's where we are on the euro. Let's get this out of the way. Take a look at gold. Now, gold is still driving down, and one thing that really stands out here on gold is the weakness on the breakdown. We had that huge bear bar down, and just like on the euro, the thing that we were talking about yesterday, after you have that big exhaustive blow-off, I want to see the market pause for a little while, stall out for a bit, chop and slop around, and then look for continuation, and that is exactly what happened here on gold as well. Big breakdown, nice little pause for a good 12-hour period, and then broke down again. And this is the area, this red line right here, that well, red zone, that's the area that the sellers need to hold if they're going to keep driving it lower. We are in a bear trend, not the strongest bear trend, but it is a bear trend, and if the sellers are going to keep pushing it down, they need to hold that. That would be a breakout pullback where it kind of breaks out through the level, pulls back, hits it, and then continues on its merry way. In this case, it doesn't look like it's doing so well. Now, the sellers were able to hold off this bull bar and close it back underneath that level. And we do still have, let's see, 2 hours and 48 minutes until this candle is closed. So a lot can happen in basically 3 hours. And this bull bar that we're looking at right now, this current bar, that might very well end up being a big old wick on the high and a failure all the way back down. It is possible. But it is certainly coming under pressure. This is starting to look like a little bit of an exhaustion break down into a V-bottom correction up. And if that's the case, we could easily see gold push back up, hold it as support, and continue on the opposite direction and start transitioning this downtrend into more of a range. Arguably, we already have seen some clues of that range being set inside of here, and they had the same thing up here, right? An attempted breakout, it failed, rolled all the way back over. They had an attempted breakout here, failed, tried going up, trapping in a bunch of buyers, rolled over and slammed down, and now we're getting a very similar situation where they tried breaking down, it failed. Now we have to wait and see. Is it going to be another one of those scenarios where it traps, and rolls, or is it going to be one that goes back to the opposite side? If it does start catching some buying pressure, we're looking for the buyers to push up to the top of that bear blow-off candle. Should be right here at around 1240. If, however, we fail to see the buyers continue, they try to push up, fail, once it starts turning back down again, there's a very good chance that this wants to break down even further to potentially attempt a bottom wedge retest. That would be a swing low retest and a channel low retest all around the same place at around, you know, just kind of eyeballing it, going to be around 1220. Now, depending on how many candles form, could be a little bit further than that, could be shallower than that, but that's generally the area that we're looking for at the moment on gold. And it's looking pretty good. You know, the big thing that we need to see is this going to be a failure from the buyers and it rolls over, or is this going to be a attempted move up, and then at the very, last 20-30 minutes of the candle, it rolls all the way back over and crashes down, trapping in a bunch of people, and that should see a spike down. So for me personally, I'm kind of sitting on hands. I want to see what happens here. This zone of interest around 1225, I want to see, do they hold above it? Do they break down back below it? Does it try to go up and fail? It's a little bit of a congestion zone here, so I'm sitting on hands. I'm not really interested in doing anything on gold at the moment until we get a little more info. That out of the way. Over on crude oil, we had the inventory numbers out today. We had the major level of support at 66.70 and 67.17. Those are the big API levels of support and resistance for today. And for the most part, we can see that they held really nicely. Now keep in mind, this stuff wasn't here at the time. Well, I mean, it was, but the API level wasn't there. The API level actually formed somewhere inside of here. So that actually is kind of a nice thing, because not only do we have the API support coming into play, but that also lines up very nicely with other structural levels of support. So kind of stacked up on top of one another. And that worked out pretty nicely as a support level and a resistance level for that matter, until it finally broke out above. Now it's looking for more continuation. The API yesterday was forecasted at 0.629 million. Crude oil inventories are forecasted at a negative 3.622 million. The API was correct in that it was going to be a build, but it was a build of 5 million. So the amount that the API was forecasting was way off, not even close. But it did assume that it was going to be a build, which is actually bearish, but we're seeing prices lift a little bit further up. Now, to me, again, this is one of those situations where I have to look at it and I have to say, you know what, there's really not that well of an established trend anymore. They had their chance to get a trend going up here and the breakout of the highs, and that completely failed. So this right now looks like they're trying to get a measured leg lower. Right? We have that measured leg down. Everything is looking pretty good for the sellers to try to keep it going. And if we measure that area up, right, if we take a line from the high of this to right there, we can then take this level and drag it down, and we can see that measured move still has a little bit of a ways to go. Now, does that mean that the measured leg is done? Not necessarily. With most, and this goes for a lot of different technical things, but it's never really perfect, right? We have a couple other things that are lining up in that we have some major previous swing lows. Those are coming into play and holding the market up. And even though we do have an objective to the downside that hasn't been reached, this is one of those cases where I look at this and say, it might just be good enough. If the market does end up rolling back over, that is a prime objective down to around 65.80s. But if it does start pushing higher right here, it wouldn't be that big of a surprise. I'm sorry, my green screen is tipping on me. There we go. So it wouldn't be that big of a surprise, really. Where it stands, I'm not really seeing a whole lot of proof to really believe this bull bounce up. Sure, it has a huge bull engulfing candle, and there's a lot of bullish continuation potential here, and they are following it up with a nice bull bar, but again, there's still 2.5 hours left on the candle. A lot can change, and, well, not a guarantee. You can't ever guarantee anything in trading, but there's going to be a lot of sellers up here that are selling between this zone, that major swing low and the major swing high, and that's going to be a hot spot for a lot of traders looking at an area of interest. So if we load this up, we'll put a little rectangle on that so we can keep track of it. But that's the area right there. And as long as the market is congested inside of there and stays below it, that is going to be seen as bearish. If it does break out above it, that's the break that buyers are going to be looking for continuation to the upside. So as it stands right now, crude oil is in a little bit of a range. They are bullish at the moment. I would prefer to see them roll over a little bit. I am still slightly on the bear side, even though we are holding a trap low. I like the inventories coming out bearish. Everything looks good for it to fall, but we're not seeing the sellers yet. So what does that mean? Well, we can't stay biased, right? When the market's telling us it's doing something, you got to follow along with it. The market's going to do whatever it wants to do, whether you want it to or not. And in this case, it's turning higher. We've got a lot of bullishness. It's a 4-hour bull engulfing candle after trapping the lows and turning higher, and it looks like it's following through. So I have to sit on the buy side, at least in the short term. In the long term, I would prefer to see this push up into this resistance, try to break out above it, fail, and then roll right back over, back to the downside. And then we've got the S&P. Now, the S&P is pretty choppy. I mean, if you were trading today, the indexes were, man, what's a worse way to say slow? Abysmal. Today in the index markets, it was extremely slow. It was a sleeper today. And we saw that across the board. The indexes weren't really moving that much. The stock market, there was only 2 or 3 really good picks that kind of stood out. Nothing was moving, and everything was really, really slow, and that likely has something to do with the fact that yesterday had that huge rally up. Everybody was waiting for Trump and Putin to talk. and then kind of calm down. It's a little bit of repositioning. The S&P is pushing higher. It does have a nice bull bar, but I can't say that I necessarily believe this. We're not seeing the follow-through. Now, again, 2.5 hours left in the candle. A lot can change, but at the moment, it doesn't look that good. Buyers are trying to get it going, but where are they? Now, one thing that can happen in these types of situations where it doesn't look that good, and it probably won't look that good if this happens. It won't look that good for, you know, another 2 hours, but that final 30 minutes, that's where, if the candle stays about this big, a lot of traders and institutional traders will push in and try to drive it up to get a strong bull bar to get more people involved, and then maybe potentially sell it back down into them. I just don't like the way that it looks. It feels really, really top heavy. If we look across the highs here, we can see a plain as day ascending wedge, and we are at the top of it. There's a lot of issues for me at these highs. So for me, even though this is a bull trend and it does look very, very nice to the upside, I would prefer to see a bigger pullback here. And what I would really love to see is a trap down here back to 27.90. So at the moment, we are bullish, and unless the last 30-40 minutes of this candle really goes flying higher, I'm going to be looking at this as more of a, I don't really believe this move up. I'm going to look to try to sell and try to push the market back down a little bit for a larger pullback. If that doesn't happen and it does start breaking higher or showing signs that the sellers just do not have what it takes, then we're looking for an upside move for further momentum to the upside, and potentially even to challenge the all-time highs, which aren't really that far away anymore. So we'll have to wait and see, but that's kind of the way that it looks at the moment. For me, going into the overnight session, I'm going to be looking to potentially try to find some short-term selling opportunities to then look to buy it back up. Earliest area of support, be right there at 28.0575. Next level after that at 27.90. Otherwise, looking pretty good. So that's going to do it for the futures market outlook. Feel free to type in any markets you want me to take a look at for you, and I will cover the CRNX trade as well. CRNX was one of those situations that worked out. I don't think we could have put it any better. First of all, right out of the gate, CRNX was anticipated to open up quite a bit lower. It opened up about 15 or 20% higher than they were anticipating it to open. And then when it finally started catching some legs, it just went flying, right? It did not stop. It just kept opening and going and going and going and going, opening up at 1925. If I remember correctly, they were wanting it to open, what price would they want it? 17, I think is what it was. Yeah, 17. So they were looking at it to open at 17. It opened up at 1925, pushed down to 1923 in a low, and then went flying higher. So again, if you aren't sure what I'm talking about for an IPO trade, make sure to check out that IPO trading tutorial that will go over everything. But what a beautiful move up. Really hard to be upset with a move that looks like this. And generally speaking, I mean, it checked all the boxes. It had over 1 million volume. I like it to be over 500,000, but this was over 1 million. It was gapping up from where they were anticipating it to go from. I mean, everything, just check mark all the way down the list. And when it finally started lifting right out of the gate, bull bar, bull bar, bull bar, bull bar, bull bar, finally broke out. I actually missed this initial breakout. I had to pick it up on the pullback here, but bought into it on the pullback and just let her rip. Now, I exited, admittedly, way too early. I honestly did not think that this was going to happen. I exited on this pop-up here and exited the final position down here. But, you know, it's hard to say when you're going to have this kind of move, and that's why it's always nice to hang on to a runner. And, well, today was definitely a good example of that. So from that area of interest, all the way back down to around that $20.50 mark, it pushed all the way up to a high of $24.64. So if you're not a huge stock trader, maybe you don't care. But if you do like trading stocks on occasion, IPOs like this can be a phenomenal trading opportunity. And today, it potentially offered up, at least for me, a good 40-50 cent move on the initial spike higher. And if you really hung on to it and let that thing bleed, it moved up a good $3-4 for you. I was not able to hang on to it for that long. I don't have that much patience, but did look what a beautiful move on CRNX. The other one that we were watching was Ruby. Ruby had all the boxes checked as well. It looked like one that was going to just go flying higher, and it had a great start to the day. It opened up 30% higher than they thought it was going to, and then it just never stopped tanking. It put in a high of 33.01 and now a low of 23.75, bouncing back a little bit into the 25s. But just a dumpster of an IPO on the open, not what you want to see for that kind of move. So I did not have anything on Ruby. And then the other one that opened up today didn't have any volume, so didn't really pay much attention to that. But CRNX, definitely the cake winner for today. Beautiful movement. Just what a gorgeous run higher. kind of frustrated that I didn't hang on to more. You know, that greed and fear, kind of FOMO I bet inside here a little bit too. But oh well. Hindsight trading is a little bit different than trading when the markets are actually open and moving, right? So, again, feel free to type in any markets you want me to take a look at, and then we'll wrap it up from there. That was really the only big one that kind of stood out for me today. God, the stocks were so dead this morning. Pop all these back down to 5-minute charts. All right. Not seeing any other markets coming in or getting typed in. Not a big deal at all. So that'll do it for today. Overall, you know, as long as you stayed patient today, you probably did okay. I think the biggest thing and the biggest hurdle that a lot of traders, and I'm probably going to hear in the comments and emails, a lot of traders probably had problems with being patient. When a market is doing absolutely nothing, which is dead, it's really hard to sit there and do nothing along with it. But sometimes that's the best option. And today, that was definitely the case. We really didn't see any good trading opportunities until well after the stock exchange opened, going into the 10 o'clock and even beyond before things really started kicking off. So as long as you stayed patient and stuck to those plans, you probably did all right. Maybe you didn't have any trades today, which is, again, there's nothing wrong with that either. So, like always, underneath the video, make sure to click on the subscribe and notification bell icon so you're notified every time one of these videos starts up. And every time we go live, we usually launch a couple videos a week as well, going over all kinds of different stuff, how to trade different patterns and different trading, just all kinds of cool stuff. So make sure to sign up so you don't miss any of that. As always, like we always say, make sure to always make a plan, trade the plan, follow those rules. Doesn't matter what market you're trading, and you should be all right. Until the next time, enjoy the rest of the day. Hopefully you had an awesome trading day today, and hopefully you have a great trading day tomorrow. Enjoy. We'll see y'all then.